Okay, we're now recording. So this will always be recorded, this tutorial. So my videos will be recorded and this tutorial will be recorded on Blackboard. In the content section. There will be a folder that says links to the videos and tutorials. I will put the videos and tutorials on YouTube. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, if you can't access YouTube, if you don't have a VPN or something, contact me. We'll try to figure a way around it. It's possible using WeTransfer. It's not great, but it's possible that I send you the videos because they're very large. You know, they're a couple of gigs per video. So generally speaking, Chloe, if you are here, please turn on your camera. So generally speaking, I'll ask you to watch the videos before class, and then together here in class, thank you, together here in class, I will record this, we will discuss things, and that will be it. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share my screen. Where did I put this here? Okay, can everybody see the PPT?
Yeah.
Good. So generally, this is what the video is going to be like. It'll just be a PPT, but today let's go through it together because obviously this is our first class. We want to have an introduction to how we're going to run this class. What's the procedure for having such a big class on Zoom? Then the substance, what are we going to learn this semester in this subject? And then we'll start with our first lesson, which is a basic introduction to human resource management. As I said, I didn't ask you to do any work before today's class. So there's nothing you need to have read. Though I do believe in my email, I asked you to download the e-textbook, but there's actually 2 of them. So I'll explain that. Okay, so the format of the class. We'll talk about how we're going to do this once a week, what the lectures are going to be like, what's your homework going to be like, how will I give you a grade, and then how will we communicate. Format of the class first. So we meet Tuesday mornings from 8 to 11. Now, technically, it's 8 to 10:30. And I will try to keep this to 2.5 hours, but I am giving myself 3 hours. So unless you guys have something that starts at 10:30, you know, if you do, I understand, just talk to me. But otherwise, I expect that this is pretty much a 3-hour class with a 15-minute break. We do have a lot of people. There is a lot of stuff to cover. And so it is important that we get that much time. So what we're going to do is we'll discuss the video lecture. We'll discuss the textbook. We'll discuss any case studies. Somebody already pointed out to me that on the PPT, I talk about doing something called the Carter Cleaning Company, which is a case study. Unfortunately, that is not in the textbook that you have. That's in the textbook that is in paperback in China. So I have to get those and scan them, and I will then give them to you. Each class, we will also have a group presentation, which we'll talk about in a moment. You'll be expected to take notes. You'll be expected to participate, and you will get a grade for participation and attendance. Your homework in this class is actually going to be quite easy. I am just asking you to read in the textbook, really nothing else. There's other classes where I give a weekly quiz. I'm not planning on doing that right now, although we have like 16 weeks. If people aren't doing the work and aren't learning the material and don't know the answers to anything, I will 100% start a quiz for everybody. No question in the world. So absolutely, you got to read. So it's a 2.5-hour class, but I'd like it to be 3 hours. I'll give you a 15-minute break. Attendance is required. If you can't come for any reason, please WeChat me or email me. That's it. The textbook. So we have 2 textbooks really in this class. One of them is this actual book, which is Gary Dessler's book. And some of the readings I give you are in this. I put an e-copy of this for free on Blackboard. It's not, you know, it's not that big a book. It's not bad, but it is kind of, you know, textbooky. I don't love this book. You know, it's not my favorite. I like this other book that I put up there better, which I have printed out chapter by chapter. It's a little bit longer, but it's way better to read. And so this is the one I'm usually going to assign you. That's the American Management Association. And I kind of like their work a little more. So, you know, your homework for this coming week. So, you know, I have both of them. For this coming week, I'm going to give you homework to read chapter 1 in the American Management book. And you'll see on Blackboard, I've separated those by chapters. So you can download them chapter by chapter. I will ask you to read it. And there are some exercises that we will do together. Then in the back, there are review questions. And I will usually be asking these questions in class, be discussing these things to make sure everybody understands. So I'll tell you right now, your homework is to read chapter 1 of the American Management Association's HR book. Okay, that's this one by, I think her name is Diane Arthur. Okay, it's a good book. So this is the one I'd like to use. Everybody clear on that? Good. So your grades. I'm going to keep this class pretty easy. You know, you're going to get 10% for showing up and for participating. And if you don't participate, if you really don't know the answer, if you're not doing the work, I will take a couple of points off, but as long as you're coming to class, that's an easy 10% right there. Group presentation. So every week, I'm going to ask, we have about, I think we have 20 people or so, 20, 21 people. I'm going to put you guys into groups of, you know, 3 or 4 people. And each week I'm going to give you a different assignment that I would like this group to do. Then when we come together, this group is going to create a PPT, and I'll give you the first, you know, 10 minutes of class or so, and I'll ask you to do a presentation. This is 10% of your grade. So I've decided to do that this semester rather than a quiz. I think that's going to be easier for you guys. I don't know how busy your semester is, but I know, having taught on Zoom before, and you having taken Zoom classes, that it can be a challenge. We have to move a little more slowly sometimes, right? There might be connectivity problems. There might be just problems getting everybody to answer questions. So I'd rather do it that way. So I will ask you guys this week, I need 3 volunteers to form a group. And I'll even help you a little bit with the assignment. But this week I need 3 volunteers. In fact, right now, let me stop sharing. Let me get my 3 volunteers. 3 people want to raise their hands? Okay, I got Ethan. Who's going to work with Ethan? I got Juan. One more. Who's the lucky person? And Rodrigo. Great. Okay, you 3 guys right now, Ethan, Juan, and Rodrigo, your assignment is to tell all of us next week about the history of human resource management. I will send you 3 an email over Blackboard, and I'll give you a little document that should help you to get started with that one. Since you guys were the first, I'll give you a little something to help. But mostly you're just going to have to, you know, look on Wikipedia. This isn't a hard assignment, but, you know, give me a nice, this is 10% of your grade. That is not nothing. So give me a nice 10 minutes. I expect all 3 of you to be speaking, not at the same time. So decide, you know, maybe somebody's going to talk about pre-modern history of HR up to the Industrial Revolution. And then somebody else will talk about the Industrial Revolution until World War II. And then somebody else will talk about World War II to present, something like that. Again, just, you know, 10 minutes. Absolute max is like 12 or 13 minutes. Don't make this a 15 or 20-minute thing. Keep it short. Any questions on that? No, good. And then before next class, I'll put everybody in groups. If you want to, after class, there's people you'd like to work with, or during the break, you want to get together in a group of 3, that's fine with me. You know, I don't need to choose the groups. Just tell me. I do not care. And if you don't, then I'll just put you in groups. Makes no difference.
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
Will the groups be the same throughout the whole semester? Or...
Wait, Anais, yes? What's the question?
I said, will the groups remain the same, or do they change in the week?
The groups are only for the purpose of this presentation. The group isn't going to do anything else. I might, at times in this class, put you in different breakout rooms, or I might put you in groups to discuss something, but there is no permanent group except for this one presentation that's 10 to 12, maximum 15 minutes long. That's it. Okay, let's continue. Okay, then we will have a midterm. The midterm is significant. That's 30% of your grade, and a final, which of course is significant. That is 50% of your grade. The midterm and the final will both be short answer questions. For this class, the midterm is going to be more traditional than I usually give in other classes. There will be some multiple choice. There will be some true-false questions. Now, I'm not going to give you anything that requires memorization, obviously. This is an open book class. It has to be. So I'm just going to ask you to, you know, write answers to questions pretty much. But in the past, I've asked some years I ask students to write an essay. Some years I ask students to make a packet that you would give to employers. I'm pretty sure this year I just want a traditional test, but I'll make a final decision on that this week. And then the final exam will be just like the rest of my classes. It'll be one long fact pattern, a story. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a story that you guys get a job in China as the HR manager for a company. And this company has all kinds of problems, and you're going to have to fix those problems. That's what it's going to be. And if anybody has a question they want to ask while I'm teaching, please just unmute your microphone and speak. You don't need to raise your virtual hand. I can't see everybody at the same time. There's too many people. So just unmute and speak. Attendance. You got to come to class. As soon as you miss 30% of the classes, that's 5 out of 17, you're done. You can't take the final test anymore. And it is your job to know how many classes you missed. Now, if you want to, you know, if you really don't know, you can ask me, but sometimes I have students who just ask me all the time, how many classes have I missed? That's your job. You got to know that. Don't miss more than 5 unless you have a good reason. I'll always listen to a good reason, but you should, if you have a reason, tell the office. Homework. So homework is going to be reading in the textbook. I will give you handouts or case studies. I will sometimes ask you to write things. I might adjust this and give you a grade on certain things. I might ask you to make, I will ask you to make resumes and cover letters and to make sure everybody is a LinkedIn. There are things I will ask you to do because this is HR. And so this class kind of has two sides to it. One side is this is an academic class. And that means we're learning theoretical things about recruitment and about selection, about compensation, about labor dispute boards. We're learning about performance evaluations. We're learning about training. We're learning every aspect of if you're running a business or you're a manager of a business, how do you really deal with all the people? How do you hire people? How do you choose the right people? How do you train them? How do you onboard them? How do you evaluate if they're doing a good job? What does good job mean? You know, so many companies, especially in China, really don't have great HR programs. And so it's very important that we learn this. And any manager needs to have a working knowledge of HR. That's the side that I'm training you to be a manager. Then there's the other side, where you're going to graduate from school and you're going to go get a job, probably. And so in your job, you're probably going to start out as an employee, which means you need to understand, how do you get the job? How do you search for a job? How do you write a good resume? How do you write a good cover letter? How do you interview? You know, and the more that you know about that side, the more that as a manager, you're able to choose a good person. Because you'll know who is giving a good interview. You'll understand what is a good resume. So there are two sides to this course. There's the theoretical academic side, and there's the practical, are you ready to look for a job when you finish this course side. As I said, the group presentation, max 15 minutes. It'll be around 3 people, and I'll give you a topic the week before. I will not tell you topics a month in advance, maybe 2 weeks. You know, I want them to be pretty good. The final exam will be held during the last weeks. It will cover everything in the class, and it will, as I said, be short answers. I'm going to tell you about a company. Here are all the problems. You got to explain the problems and tell me how you would fix it. notifications. So really, we're using, I guess, 3 pieces of technology. We're using WeChat to talk, we're using Blackboard, which is where I'll put all of your information, and then we're using YouTube, which is where I'll put all the videos. So please make sure you have access to those 3. And if you don't, please send me a WeChat or contact me. The rules. So traditionally, you all know my rules: just do your work, take a lot of notes, don't play with your cell phones, don't be late. And if you need to turn your camera off to go to the bathroom, or you need to take a break, or you're having a bad day, that's fine. You know, I'm not going to, you know, tell you you have to turn your camera on and be here every second. But if you show up, your camera's off, and you don't come back, then you're absent, right? If you need to leave for 15 minutes, that's fine. If you leave for 2 hours, that's not fine, unless you come and explain to me. Okay, that's how we're going to run this class. Are there any questions right now on the procedure of how we'll run this class? No? Okay. Still have 2 people with their cameras off, and I don't love that. Thanks.
I'm back.
Good. Good breakfast?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So this class is separated into 4 sections. There's the introduction to HRM, and that's not just 1 week. That's a whole big group of weeks. That's like a month, is just introducing what is HRM. Then the core of this class, which is staffing and talent management. And that is the 5 basic elements of HR, which are recruiting, selecting, training, evaluating, and compensating. Those are the 5 basic elements of human resource management. Then in part 3, and that's part 3 is probably only about 2 or 3 weeks, that's where we're going to talk about dealing with labor boards. In China, this is not an issue. They don't have them really. But it will be an issue if you're working in other countries. And then finally, we'll take a couple weeks at the end and talk about some special issues, like if you're starting your own company, how would you run an HR department for that? But today we get started with the very first section, which is managing human resources. Again, I know you didn't read this chapter. I will ask you to read it, the first 2 chapters for homework, so that you're ready for next week too. So we're going to start by talking about what is HRM, why is this important, what are some trends that have influenced HR, how has HR changed over the past few years, and then some consequences that we have if we don't really know HR. You know, HR is one of the most important elements of any business. A huge amount of an operating budget for any business is spent on HR. But a lot of companies treat it very lightly. You know, it's funny, in China, they have a special term for HR. They call it back of the house. And what they've done traditionally in China, and a lot of companies have done this, they take people who are just not very good, who can't be fired, and they put them in HR because they're in the back of the house. Nobody sees them. The customers don't see them. The clients don't see them. And so they put the people who are not the best sometimes in those departments. Now that's what used to happen in America in like the 1920s. You would have someone who was, you know, having a drinking problem or going through a divorce, was just doing bad at work, and they didn't want to fire this person, so they would put them in the back of the house. Now, all of that changed during the World Wars, and a lot of it was because during World War II especially, it was so incredibly important to make sure that all of the functions of the military were being organized. You had so many thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers coming in. And it was so critical to be able to decide, what are these people's skills? Where do they belong? Are you a good manager? Are you a good leader? Are you a good scientist? Are you good with languages? What are you good at? Should you be a leader? Should you be a follower? What should be your level? And this really pushed the field of HR forwards a lot. Another thing that pushed the field of HR forwards a lot was the idea of strategy. So in the past, in the 20s and 30s, management and HR were totally separate. So if you had a company, let's say Chloe and Anais, Christopher, you guys are the CEOs and the vice presidents of the company, you would never talk to HR. back in the 20s or 30s. If you needed some new people in the sales department or the marketing department, you would just call up HR. Let's say you call up Bella, you call up Abigail, you say, hey, we need some new people. And then Bella and Abigail and Rodrigo over in HR, they would do their job. And they would get people's resumes and they would interview people and they would find people and then send them over to work in sales or marketing. Well, what's the problem with doing it this way? And the problem is because Bella and Abigail and Rodrigo are not working with the managers, they don't really know what the company wants. Does the company want people who went to good schools or people who are just good at selling naturally? Do they want people who look a certain way? Do they want people who act a certain way? You know, without real communication with management, HR is not able to get the right people. And now HR is seen in America and most Western countries as a really critical function of higher level management, that you cannot run an effective company if you're not working closely with HR. Because of course, the people who you hire in your company is absolutely critical, especially if you're starting out in a small company. You cannot hire the wrong people. So, as I said, the Carter Cleaning Company case study I don't have for you right now. See, maybe I can get it during our break, but if not, we'll do it next week. But it is a case study that we will do throughout the semester. And we'll talk about that later. So why should we study HR? 1/3 of businesses appointed managers who didn't know anything about HR. You know, and over 1/2 of people working in the US work for small firms. And the point of saying that is, if you work for a small company, you are absolutely having to train people, mentor people, evaluate people, decide if someone is performing well. You might have to deal with giving people bonuses or rewards or punishments. You might have to deal with selecting who gets the possibility to get more training or get a promotion, selecting who goes on to a new team. The point is, if you're a manager in any company, you are doing HR things. And if the company is small, you're going to be doing a lot of HR things. And a lot of companies don't recognize how critical it is to really have some HR training when you're thinking about management. So what is HRM? Well, let's start by saying, where does an HR manager work? They work in an organization. So what's an organization? If you studied organizational behavior, you know that it's a group of people and they have roles. Everybody knows what they're doing. And they have one common goal, which is to achieve the organization's goal, the mission. So you have a group of people, they're working together, they have roles, and they're achieving the organization's goal. That's an organization. So if you're just hanging out with a group of friends, that's not an organization. You need to have some sort of goal. You need to have assigned roles. And if you're working in HR, you are a manager, probably. So a manager is someone who helps achieve these organizational goals, but they do it through other people. Working in HR means you need to have people skills. Okay, you're definitely going to have to be a manager. We'll talk in a second about power, because HR has power. They're one of the power positions in a company. So there are two things that HR does. One, they kind of deal with power. And two, they have to communicate very well. Because if someone has a problem at work, they're often coming to the HR department to talk about that problem. As I said before, there are 5 basic functions of HR: planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. And we've seen this before, right? Planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Anybody remember? Where did that come from? Planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Someone tell me where that came from?
4 rules of management.
Functions
Okay,
of management.
so in management, who said that? Who said that there are these 4 elements?
Ayo.
Yes. So Henri Fayol said that these are the 4 functions of management, and you should remember that. So planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And now let's add one more thing, staffing. So we know what is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Planning is creating the goals of the company, finding out the standards, the rules, the procedures of the company. Organizing is delegating, figuring out who is going to do what job, making departments, giving people authority, establishing communication. Leading, that is using motivation, using morale, keeping a good climate of positive energy. Controlling, as we know from management class, controlling is definitely not telling people what to do. It is setting benchmarks, finding the best practice in an industry, and then determining if that's the best, how do we achieve that? What's our benchmark? What's our standard? If we have an English teaching company and the best in the industry is Disney and they teach 30 people a week, how many should we teach? What's our standard? 10, 20, 50? And then how do we maintain that? And if we're not achieving our benchmark, how do we take corrective action? That's planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Now let's add staffing. And staffing is really the core of this course. As I said, that is the 5 elements: recruiting, selecting, training, evaluating, compensating. So what's HRM? So as I said, and I've now said this 3 times, you know, I will ask you later in this class to tell me what are the 5 elements of HRM. And I've just said it 3 times. Let me say it once more. Recruiting, selecting, training, evaluating, compensating. Abigail, what are the 5 elements of HR?
Recruiting, selecting, training, compensation, and evaluating.
Recruiting, selecting, training,
Compensating.
appraising.
No, I said compensating, appraising. Yeah.
Okay, Rodrigo, what does appraising mean?
Like applauding.
I don't remember about your praising.
Okay, Juan, what does appraising mean? No, Crystal, what does appraising mean?
Evaluating.
Good, evaluating. That was the other word I used before. Ethan, what does evaluating mean? Don't say appraising.
Evaluating is just checking how the employee is doing in their work
Good.
and in their environment.
Sure. Just finding out if somebody's doing a good job or a bad job. That's appraising, also called evaluating. Christopher, what is compensating?
To pay them.
Yep. We have a whole method in HR to figure out how we pay someone. So it's very interesting. It's actually quantitative. So we will talk about that later. So there are 5 things in HR and 3 additional things. 1, labor relations. 2, health and safety. 3, fairness. So 5 plus 3. I do not think of it as 8. I think of it as 5 plus 3 because they're different. The 5 are the core of HR. The 3 additional factors are separate from the core. Labor relations. How do people get together and fight for their rights? Health and safety, very important these days. What kind of safety requirements do you need to follow? There are laws that we need to follow, and then there are also policies and rules and procedures. And fairness. Fairness is across the board. That's a very interesting idea. And we'll talk about what it means to be fair. If one person, it could be something like equal opportunity. If I'm paying Nicola less than I'm paying Chloe, and Nicola says, why are you paying me less? Well, I have to be fair. I have to explain a good reason. Why am I paying him less? Is it because of his abilities? Is it because of his experience? Or is it something that's a little bit unfair? What if I gave a promotion to Jonathan and Chloe says, I've worked here longer than Jonathan. Why did he get the promotion? I need to be able to explain that in HR. So 5 plus 3. Okay, these are the 8 things I want you to know. This is a big takeaway from today's class. I guarantee throughout the semester, I'm going to be talking to you about these 5 plus 3 elements of HR. What's another word for hiring? Anybody remember another word I've been saying instead of hiring?
Staffing.
Recruiting.
Selection. Selection. What does recruiting mean? Recruiting means if you want to get workers for your company, you need to get a pool of applicants who want the job. It doesn't mean they're good. It just means you need to find a group of people who want the job. That's called recruiting. Then, once you have a pool of people who want the job, you need to select who you're going to hire. You can call that hiring. You can call that selecting. Same idea. Once you've selected people, you need to train them. Training actually has 2 kinds. There's 2 kinds of training. There's onboarding, which is training when they come, when they first arrive at work. And then there's continuous training, where people are getting more skills. Evaluating, we already said, another word for that is appraising. And that is where you decide if someone is doing a good job or a bad job. Compensating, we already said, another word for that is payment. And payment does not just mean money. Then labor relations, another word for that, unions. Labor relations is unions. Health and safety, we just say H&S. And fairness is, I mean, if you want to be technical, the other word for fairness is equity. And that is really all the big stuff that we're going to cover in this class.
Sir, sorry, what is compensating?
Compensating is payment.
Payment. Thank you.
Now, if you get a job as a manager, let's say you graduate from CIP, you get your first job, you're a manager of some company in China, in Korea, in Rwanda, in Brazil, in Canada, wherever. What are you going to have to do related to HR? Well, for one, you're going to have to conduct a job analysis. So we have to know what that is. A job analysis, and we're not going to talk about it too much today because it's a really kind of a big subject. A job analysis is to figure out everything about a job so that you know who to hire for the job. And so you know if this person is doing a good job. You need to be able to plan your labor needs. You need to know how many people does this company need? What kind of people do they need? You need to be able to recruit those people. You need to be able to select those people, orient those people. Okay, for orientation, I said another word was onboarding. That's when they first come. Then training or mentoring those people. You need to be able to handle their wages and their salaries. You need to understand, as any good manager, you need to understand something about incentives. Landry, can you explain that word to me? What's an incentive?
I'm not sure.
Michael, what's an incentive?
Like something that will stimulate a person to do something.
Sure. It's like a tangible motivation. So if I said, Landry, if you study hard in this class and get an A, I'll give you 5,000 RMB. That's an incentive. If I say, if you guys come on time for class, then I'll give you a +3 on your final grade. That's an incentive. It's got to be something tangible. But a good manager knows how to give incentives. It could be extrinsic, like money or promotion or a benefit. It could be intrinsic, like if you do a good job, I will come up to you and say, hey, you were really good today and I'm proud of you. Maybe that's the incentive. But whatever it is, a good manager knows how to give incentives. And this is a huge part of HR. Because as HR managers, we're the ones who need to teach the other managers who never studied HR How do you give benefits and incentives beyond just giving people money? How do you decide if someone did a good job? How do you appraise that? How do we communicate effectively? That's huge. All managers need to communicate, but HR is different because we are supposed to be the safe place. You know, if Crystal is having a problem at her company and she's upset, what if she's having a problem with her boss, Jonathan? Well, she's not going to go to Jonathan and tell him, I'm having a problem with you. She's going to come to HR and talk to us about the problem. We really need to understand communication. HR is just a vital function and really important to know how to deal with people, to build employee relationships, to build engagement, right? If you're good at HR, you'll never need a job. Every good company needs good HR people. And some of the people I know in China who've made the most money, I'm talking like buy a house every year money, you know, real money. They work in HR. A lot of people don't realize that HR is big money, real big money if you get high up, because big companies, it's critical. If you can hire the right people, you know, you move up in HR, then you're hiring managers, you're hiring vice presidents, you're hiring high level people. And at that point, you're making just as much money as they do. So the competencies, what kind of abilities do you need as a person to be good at HR? HR is not suitable for everybody. What do you need? For one, you really need to understand some things about culture. You want to work with different people. You want to find the right people. Now, when I say culture, I don't mean like the European culture or the Eurocentric culture or the Scandinavian culture. I mean the culture of this business, the culture of Apple. Now, it might also be the culture of China or the culture of America. It might be the culture of Hewlett-Packard or the culture of Tesla. But you really need to have an understanding of how cultures work. That's how you really do well in HR. You need to understand the nature of change. Everything is always changing, and a lot of managers don't get this, especially older managers. They've been doing the same job forever. They don't want change. They've been working in Volvo for 40 years. HR, we're the ones who facilitate real change. Another thing is to be able to eliminate low-value work. So that's a really interesting concept, because first we need to identify what is low-value work. And we have to do it in a quantitative way. Can anybody tell me what does quantitative mean? Not qualitative, but quant.
Measurable.
Measurable with numbers. So let's say that I tell whoever, Harry. I say, Harry, you've worked at this company for 2 years. I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. And Harry says, why? Now, I can't say, well, Harry, because we're done. You're not good. You're not good enough. You can't do that. Not in this modern world. Harry can sue us. I need a reason to eliminate him. And I can't just say you did low value work. I have to prove it with numbers. That's HR's job. That's evaluation. To be able to measure. What can we measure? We can measure performance, efficiency, productivity, effectiveness, satisfaction. We have to be able to measure all of these things. And that's really interesting. How do you measure satisfaction? I'll tell you, if you can do it, you'll do great in HR. You'll do great in a lot of businesses. I want to get a keyboard protector. How do you measure efficiency versus effectiveness? How do you measure productivity? These are critical things if you ever want to open your own business. I mean, if you can't measure productivity, how do you know if you're productive or not? Well, you made some money. I have a friend who's an angel investor in China. And what he would do is he would go to different companies around China and he would ask them, how do you measure your productivity? And if it was a good company and they didn't know, he would invest in that company and then teach them. Because that's it. If you can measure productivity, you understand what is low productivity, you get rid of that, the company's immediately going to get a bump up. He's doing amazing because he knows how to measure these things. That's really important if you're coming into a company. credibility. HR needs to have a real track record. You need to have the ability to communicate with people effectively. And in HR, we are dealing with numbers. So how many people have you helped? How many promotions have you assisted with? How many positive people did you hire who stayed at the job for more than 3 years? Once you start to get a track record, you really can move up in HR. Delivery. That has to do with challenging people, helping people with career planning. One of the great joys of working in HR is you can give people jobs. You know, people love to have the right job. The right job makes people happy. And you can help them with that, career planning and challenging them. Business. To really succeed in HR, you need to understand strategic decision making. You need to understand mission plans, how they are created, how vision plans are created, how goals and strategies get achieved and designed. You need to understand a lot about change management. Lewin and Cotter and Cohen and all these theories of change management are really critical for HR because we're the ones that the CEOs and presidents come to when they need to make changes. And finally, technology. You need to understand HRIM. That's Human Relations Information Management. And you don't need to know HRIM, those 4 letters, that acronym, but what it means is we use software. And I'll introduce you to some of the software, but some of it is free. Most of it obviously does cost money, but we use software in HR. And if you understand how to use these basic forms of software, digital dashboards, already that is such a valuable skill when you're looking for your first job, especially in a country like China, where mostly they don't know how to use these software packages. They're really, really critical. And if you can demonstrate your knowledge of this, your value goes up a lot. Next, why is this important? Everybody get this? So why is this important? I've said before, so many people come into a business and they don't realize that as a manager, you're actually going to have to do a lot of HR stuff. So as a manager, we want to avoid some mistakes. We want to make sure that our employees are not just slacking off. We want people to do their best. We do not want to hire the wrong person. Sometimes the wrong person went to Harvard. The wrong person went to Beida. Just because people have amazing resumes does not mean they're the right person. Well, how do you decide what is the right person? You cannot just use your gut. You have to really understand, critically appraise a job and understand what is required. We want to avoid turnover. That's where people quit. It costs so much money for businesses when people quit. Legal ramifications from discriminatory actions. So in HR, we have to deal with things like a case of sexual harassment. That's something that we deal with in HR. And a sexual harassment case can bankrupt a company. A case of bad safety procedures can bankrupt a company. Legal cases can cost a company a tremendous amount of money. Unsafe practices, again, can cost us a lot of money. A lack of training. This is the #1 complaint in Chinese companies among workers, is a lack of training. And when you don't have training, it undermines performance. Or unfair labor practices, giving the wrong people promotions and benefits. People don't know why someone else has a higher or lower salary. You know, one of the worst things, oh, Alexia, hello. One of the worst things you can do in a company is have people talking and try to keep everything a secret, right? Tell your workers, don't tell anybody how much money you make. That's between me and you. Why? Why is that between me and you? Why can't we be honest about that? You know, what's the reason? Alexia. Alexia, are you Camila?
Yes, I am Camila.
Okay. Then I'm going to call you probably Alexia unless you change your name on that to Camila.
It's okay. You prefer. Thank you.
I don't care, but you can change your name. I'll call you whatever your name is on Zoom.
Oh.
Whatever you want to be called. Okay.
Thank you.
These are mistakes we want to avoid. Now I said in HR, we also have to deal with the idea of power. Camila, who has authority over you?
My parents.
Okay, anybody else?
I guess that's it.
Don't I have some authority?
Oh, yes. Professors, parents.
Okay. Michael, anybody else have authority over you besides parents and professors?
I guess, I don't know, maybe government.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, Camila doesn't think the police can tell her what to do, but I don't know who she is. Maybe in her other life, she's a little bit more important than that. So maybe police have some authority over you. The government has some authority over you. Constance, anybody else? Parents, professors, government?
Maybe God. Like if you're religious, you could say God
Okay.
has some authority.
I'll entertain that answer. I think there's one more big one.
Bosses, employers.
Oh, sure, bosses, employers, absolutely, if you're at work. So let's talk about bosses and employers. Let's say you have a job, and of course your boss has authority over you. Where does your boss's authority come from?
Hierarchy.
His position.
Okay. Their position, their hierarchy. What can they do to you if you don't listen to them?
Layoff.
They can fire you.
They can fire you, they can take away your money, they can give you a demotion, which is the opposite of promotion. They can make you go down, sure. They can hurt you, they can punish you. What about parents? Where does a parent's authority come from? It's not from their job. Christine, where does your parents' authority come from?
Well, because they provided for me, so it's like kind of, and they gave me life, obviously, but since I would stay under their roof, let's say, they have authority over my.
Okay, so you're kind of making a moral argument. They took care of you, and therefore you morally owe them. But they can't do anything to you. I mean, I'm sure sometimes, you know, many of you are probably living with your parents right now. And in that sense, sure, they have authority. They could throw you out on the street. They could not pay for school. They could take away your money or your car or whatever they gave you. If you're not living with your parents right now, then, you know, I'm not living with my parents right now, but they still have authority over me. They could just make me feel bad. What about me? Right? I have legitimate authority. I can do a very limited thing. I can lower your grade. That's pretty much it. The other one I was talking about was friends. Bella, would you say that your friends have some authority over you?
Maybe a very limited.
A limited amount of authority? Friends can give us pressure. But it's not the same as authority. In HR, we really need to understand, why should people do what we say? I'm not your boss if I'm the HR manager. I'm the HR manager. Your boss is your boss. I can't fire you. I can't demote you. I can't take away your salary. I can't do those things. But in some ways, you are dependent. You know, we're dependent on people. Whether you're dependent on your family, you're dependent on me to give you a grade, you're dependent on your friends to not abandon you. In HR, people are dependent on us too. So let's say Chloe is having a big fight with her manager, Jonathan. And Chloe, I don't know if you've ever been in a fight at work or had any sort of negative experience at work, but anybody who has can tell you it's very stressful to have to go somewhere every day for 8 hours where there's someone there who's making your life difficult. It is a really stressful thing. Now, if you come to my HR office and I am able to listen to you and talk to you and explain your options, that can be the difference between you having a breakdown, quitting the job, giving up your pension, versus you learning to walk through this difficult time, learning to communicate with a difficult person. I guarantee if you guys haven't met difficult people in your lives, then you are just young and you haven't met them yet. But there are difficult people in this world. I'm one of them, and I'm not that bad, but there are some difficult people in this world, and you will meet them. But a lot of times you're dependent on them, especially at work. The number one reason that people quit their jobs is bad relationship with the boss. That's number one. People will quit fantastic jobs if they have a bad relation with their boss. You know what's number two? Bad relationship with coworkers. Bad salary is way down. Hating the job is way down on the list. The reason that people quit their jobs is they just can't communicate. In HR, people are really dependent on us in a way that is both critical and not based on legitimate power. We do have power in HR, and we need to be aware of that from the very beginning. We have the capacity to influence someone's behavior. So if Chloe is fighting with Jonathan, power and politics are part of any group. They're necessary. The more you understand about politics, and I don't mean government politics, I mean office politics, the politics of power. Why did Jonathan not give Chloe the opportunity to go to that training meeting last Wednesday? And now Chloe is so angry because she was the only one who didn't go to that meeting and they got some, whatever. It's all politics, it's all power. But it may be such that now, Chloe, you're really upset. You don't want to work with Jonathan. Maybe you're having trouble sleeping at night. Maybe you don't want to come to work. These are real things. I'm not saying that in HR we're therapists. We're not. We are people who understand power, understand how to use it, understand how to explain it. A lot of this world has to do with status. A lot of people's behaviors, both positive and negative, have to do with status and power. And in HR, this is something really critical to us, is understanding group dynamics. So let's spend a little bit of time and talk about power. Not too much time. But let's talk a little about power. You know, there are 5 kinds of power. There's 3 kinds of formal power. What kind of power do I have? What do you think, Juan? Do I have coercive, reward, or legitimate power?
I would say you have coercive power.
Ooh, really? Coercive power means I can convince you to do something by sort of manipulating your emotions.
Okay. Well,
it's the opposite of a reward. So if I said, like, Juan, you know, if you don't join the first presentation group, I just feel like maybe you're not going to do very well in this class, and I just don't think the other students are going to respect you. That would be very coercive. I would not do that. I have legitimate power. My job is legitimate, right? I have this power as a result of my job at a school that you have chosen to go to. I was hired by the school. I have a legitimate background. I have the credentials to teach these classes, and I have legitimate authority. I can lower or raise your grade for legitimate reasons, because you did well on the test or you did poorly on the test. Can I give you rewards? Not really. Can I give one of you some money? Would be a very bad thing for me to do. You know, I can't really give you a reward. It would be very inappropriate for a teacher to give a reward to a student, for the same reason that it would be inappropriate for me to manipulate or coerce a student. But these are formal kinds of power. If you're a manager, you certainly do have the power to coerce and reward. If I am, you know, Constance's manager, I could certainly say, you know, Constance, I'd like you to work Friday night. And I know that it's Friday night. I know it's working overtime. But, you know, look, if you want to grow in this business, that's the way it is. And if you don't want to work Friday night, that's just fine. You don't have to. But when I'm thinking of people to promote, I might not think of you. That's very manipulative But a manager, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, it's not great, but a manager can certainly do that. A teacher probably wouldn't. Then there's two other kinds of power, which are expert and reference. Expert power is when someone is really good at something. So if Ethan is an amazing tango dancer, he's one of the best tango dancers in all of China. And Nicola really wants to learn the tango. So he goes to Ethan, and Ethan says, Nicola, if you want to be a master, you must become a vegetarian. And Nicola says, I don't want to. And Ethan says, well, look, you want to be a master, I'm a master, you have to become a vegetarian. There's a chance Nicola would do that, even if he doesn't want to, because Ethan has power over Nicola. It's the power that you get from being an expert at something, anything that other people want to learn. You can exert authority over them. And then finally, there's referent power, the most powerful of all. Referent power is when you want to be like somebody. So let's say that Chandra is the most popular girl in school. And whatever she dresses, people just copy her fashion, they copy her hairstyle. Everybody wants to be like Chandra. Now, if Chandra tells somebody, you know, listen, if you want to be my friend or if you want to be like me, you need to dye your hair blonde. They'll do it. Why? Does Chandra have any actual power over these people? No, of course not. Right? She doesn't have any legitimate power. This isn't the power she gets from a job. She can't give these people a reward. She can't really coerce them. She's not an expert, but people want to be like her. Think of Gandhi. Gandhi was an example of referent power. He had no legitimate authority to tell anybody to do anything, but millions of people listened to him. Why? It's just who he was. That's referent power. It's the highest kind of power. Think of a guru. Think of a cult leader on the negative side.
Gurus are good.
Did you say gurus are good?
Yeah.
Do you mean like, can you explain that statement? Gurus are good?
Gurus are teachers.
Gurus are teachers, but I would be careful before you get deep. I was going to say get into bed with, but that's almost too literal. I know somebody who followed, what was his name? He's a famous Indian guru. And this guy went to Europe where, Osho. Anybody ever hear of Osho?
Yeah, he's awesome.
I knew a guy who actually spent his entire 20s and 30s just following Osho. It didn't go great for him. I'll tell you the end of that story. Spending your entire 20s and 30s following another guy, maybe not the best thing to do. So formal power is based on your position. A teacher, a doctor, they have formal power, a boss. Coercive power is the power of fear. Very powerful. Fear is very powerful. The power to punish somebody, withhold information, dismiss, demote, suspend, anything negative. Very powerful. Dangerous though. It's not positive. You know, and sometimes teachers will use that power. Say, you guys are being terrible. If you don't do this work, you're going to fail this class. I will fail you. That's very coercive power. It's real, but it's dangerous. People don't like it. Makes people work hard, but they don't like it. But it's the power based on fear. Reward power is positive. Rewards do not have to be money. They don't have to be something you can touch. A reward could be a smile. A reward could be a positive word of praise or encouragement. Legitimate power, as I said, is your authority in a company or school or a hospital, something like that. That's your position in an organization. Okay, and then we talked about the other three kinds of power. Personal power, your unique characteristics, like your referent power. People have an admiration for someone, a desire to be like that person. Expert power is just having special skill or knowledge. The most effective kinds of power, as I said, are personal power. Personal power is more powerful than anything else. And when expert or referent power are related to satisfaction, then commitment is highest. So in HR, we need to talk about these words a lot: satisfaction, efficiency, productiveness, effectiveness, commitment, citizenship. So what is commitment? Well, this is some sort of quality that workers have where they feel that the job is treated as part of their life. It's not just a place they go to earn money. It's a place where they have a sense of ownership. It's really, really powerful feeling. This is where you get employees who will help clean places, who will just pick up trash, who will stay late, who will come early, not because they're paid more, but because they're committed. And we really want employees to be committed. We want employees to be satisfied. The best way to get that is when employees want to be like us. Some employees very much, I have a friend who works at Facebook and works with Mark Zuckerberg almost every week. And I said, what's he like? And the guy said, he's the kind of guy you want to be around. That the movies about him are just, I mean, they're trying to sell tickets. That's not what he's like. He is an expert. He has a tremendous intelligence and a tremendous sense of accomplishment and knowledge. Think of Elon Musk. People want to be around these people. And because they have such expert power and such referent power, it's related to employee satisfaction, being around these people. You don't need to be Gandhi to be a great leader. You don't need to be Elon Musk to be a great manager. But you do need to have some expert or referent power. And we can learn to develop those things. Coercive power usually backfires. Using the power of fear on people doesn't usually work. It'll get them to do something for a period of time, but after that, nobody wants to be scared. The most important aspect of this idea of power in HR is dependence. So why does, if Chloe comes to me in HR and says she's fighting with her boss, Jonathan, where's the dependence here? Well, Chloe is depending on HR to handle this problem. So it's based on alternatives that, in this case, Chloe perceives as important. She doesn't want to quit this job. She doesn't want to lose this job. She doesn't want to be fired. She also doesn't want to have a terrible time every day. So she's bringing this to us in HR. And she's putting a lot of dependence on us. And we need to be very careful right at the beginning of HR, because HR is a power position. It's a position where people are going to come to you, especially if you're good, and say, can you help me? It's a position where people are asking for your help. Okay, this leads to the general dependency postulate. The general dependency postulate says, when you have something that you control, okay, you possess anything, and it could be knowledge, and you control it, other people depend on you, and this gives you power. The more that people depend on you, the more power you have. And dependence is inversely proportional to the alternative sources of supply. What does that mean? Inversely proportional. So if we're talking about proportionality, we're talking about an XY chart. Inversely proportional is like this. The more supply there is, the less dependence there is. What does that mean? Well, let's say that Chloe comes to my office and says, David, I'm having these terrible fights with my boss, Jonathan, and I'm so upset. And I say, well, Chloe, if you leave this job, what would you do? And Chloe says, oh, there are 20 other jobs that offered me positions, and they're all wonderful positions. Now, does Chloe really depend on me to fix this situation with Jonathan? No. Her dependence is very low because the supply of new jobs is very high. So the more supply that there is of whatever you have, I have this job, I can fix it for Chloe. That's what I have. If Chloe has no other opportunities, she will be highly dependent on me. And the more dependent someone is on you, the more careful you need to be of your power over them. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this at the very beginning, but I really think it's important to understand how power works. Because people try to get HR to do things for them. So what creates this dependence on people? Well, it has to be important. If Chloe hates this job and doesn't want this job, well then she doesn't care. She doesn't depend on me because she hates the job. She wants to leave anyway. Scarcity. So if there's no other jobs in Shanghai, well then she'll be very dependent on me. If there's lots of other jobs, she won't be dependent on me. Non-substitutability. Let's say that Chloe can find another job in Shanghai easily, but there's no job like this. There are other jobs, but nothing like this. Nothing can be substituted. So let's say in our job, Chloe gets to take helicopters around China and meet with vice presidents of big companies. Well, she might find another job teaching English, but that's not substitutable. It's not the same. It's a very different job. So these three things together determine the level of someone's dependence. Now let's say that I want to help Chloe. She's come to my HR department and I want to help Chloe. And I say, listen, Chloe, Jonathan is a good boss. He's been working here for 15 years. He's a tough boss, but he doesn't like you. Okay, I've talked to Jonathan. He doesn't like the way you work. This is his opinion. And I need you to deal with it. I need you to go back to working with Jonathan and just don't let it get to you. Now that's going to be very hard for Chloe to accept. How do I get her to accept this? How do I get someone to accept doing something they don't want to do? Or Harry comes to me and says, David, I've been here at this company for 5 years. I want a raise. Well, what if I can't give him a raise? How do I get him to stay at this job, don't quit, but accept that I'm not giving you a raise? In HR, we need to be able to use our power to influence people. There are 9 ways that we're going to influence people in HR. Number 1, legitimacy. So legitimacy is saying this is a government, this is an organizational rule. This is the rule. Harry, when you've been here 6 years, you get a raise. That's it. Not 5, not 7, 6. That's the rule. In that case, Harry might say, okay, I understand. How do I get you guys to accept coming to class at this time? If this time isn't convenient for you, well, if this is the time it is, then this is the time it is. That's it. The organization made the time. Number 2, rational persuasion. And that is using logic and facts to try to convince someone. It's convincing. Chloe, I know that Jonathan is a difficult boss, but he has been here 15 years. And I'll tell you, he makes a lot of money. And if you learn his style, you will be able to earn that much money. And you only need to work with him for 3 months. And, just using facts to try to convince her. Inspirational appeals has to do with using emotions. Chloe, I know that Jonathan is a difficult boss to work with, but remember what we do here. We help children. That's what we're about. We're not about Jonathan. We're not about you. We're about the children. And remember, when you get angry, that it's for the kid, that kind of emotional appeal. Consultation. Consultation is saying, okay, I would like to meet with Chloe and Jonathan. Let's talk about this together. Let's consult. Now, if that doesn't work out, maybe I'll meet with Jonathan separately. But I can bring in Jonathan, I can work with him, I can work with both of you separately. That's consultation. Exchange. Exchange is giving you something, a benefit or a reward. Saying, okay, Chloe, I know you don't want to work with Jonathan. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a bonus. You're not supposed to get it for another 6 months, but you're doing a good job. I'll give you your bonus today. Or I'll give you a promotion. or I'll give you a better title. That's exchange. I will give you this in exchange for you doing what I want you to do, staying at this job. Personal appeals, not a great one. Come on, Chloe, you're my cousin. Come on, you're part of my family. Just come on, just don't be like that. Personal appeals, right? We've known each other for 10 years. I was your teacher back in CIP. Come on, just work with Jonathan. Ingratiation. But Chloe, you're so smart and pretty, and you're so mature and wise. I mean, I know Jonathan's just not as good as you, but come on, not everybody can be as smart and as amazing as you are. Ingratiation. It works. It's not pretty, but it works. Coalitions. I'm going to get Harry and Crystal and Rodrigo, Chloe's best friends, to come to Chloe and say, listen, Chloe, come on. All of us support you. We're your friends here. You can turn to us when you have trouble. Getting a group of people to help motivate her. Now, any of these things could work. Could get Chloe to do what I want her to do, stay working with Jonathan. That's my job in HR. I need to understand how to influence people. We talked a little about this in management class. And I said in management, we don't really focus on motivation too much. In organizational behavior, we hit motivation pretty hard, but we don't really talk about the HR side of it, which is influence. We need to be able to influence people. Okay, I don't think I need to go through all of those again. You can look at the PPT, you can see the definitions of them again, but it is useful stuff to know. In terms of influence, it's the least effective, right? Trying to say like, come on, you're my cousin. The most effective is using logic or using emotions or having meetings with the people involved. Those tend to be the best. Rational persuasion is the only one that works across levels. What does that mean, across levels? It means I could use logic with a person who works at the factory and the vice president and the CEO and the manager. It doesn't matter what level you are in the company. Logic is logic. Facts are facts. They work. And finally, directions. If I want to motivate someone with emotions, it's much better if I'm a boss talking to an employee. If I say, Chloe, come on, you have to do this for the children. It's all about the children. It's not about Jonathan. Would that work very well if I was an employee and Chloe was the CEO? I said, come on, boss. It's about the children. You don't worry about the salary. Don't worry about your money this month. Think about the children. What's the CEO going to say? David, who do you think you're talking to? You're fired. You don't talk to me that way. I'm the CEO. You don't try to twist my emotions, right? That's downwards when you try to play with people's emotions. You don't do that to someone above you. Pressure is a downwards thing. And in HR, we do have power. Remember, Chloe came to my office. I didn't go to her. She came to me because she needed help. So all of a sudden, our status is that I can help her. I can exert influence downwards. Okay, lots of stuff. How about we take, you guys need 15 minutes? Can we take a 10-minute break? Take a 12-minute break. We'll come back at 9:30. Oh, it's 16 minutes. No, that's 4 minutes. Okay, we'll come back at 9:35. 9:35. That's actually probably not the time where you are. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay, we are recording again. So let us continue. We have just finished our conversation of power, authority, what it means that HR is sort of a power position. And let's continue. So now we get into what we call line and staff. And it is important for us to understand the difference between line and staff. You are going to hear that. So we understand what authority is now. What's the difference between line authority and staff authority? So line authority is like, I am your teacher, I can tell you what to do. I have line authority. Down the line, you know, you can tell people what to do. Line authority means you can tell people what to do because your position is higher. Staff authority is just the right to advise people. So which one do we have in HR, right? Line authority is this idea of a superior and subordinate relationship, decision-making. Do we have line authority? The answer is sometimes. Can I tell Chloe what to do? Can I say, Chloe, if you do not, is Chloe back? Or is this a VPN problem?
I'm
there's
back.
Chloe. So if I say, you know, Chloe, you have to go back to work with Jonathan, or else I'm sorry, you know, we're going to have to let you go. I might be able to say that. That would be an example of HR having line authority. Certainly, if I told HR at CIP, if I said to them, you know what, I don't want to teach this class, they would say, well, you have to teach this class. I mean, it's not a negotiation. That's line authority. But mostly, HR works with staff authority. When I'm working with employees in HR, I might have line authority. But when managers come to HR, if Christopher is the manager of this company and Constance is the manager, and they come and they say, David, you know, we're not happy with the fight going on between Jonathan and Chloe. You know, what do you think we should do? That's just advice. I can't tell the boss what to do. I can't tell the manager what to do. HR is a management level job. And so is marketing manager, sales manager, production manager, advertising manager, branding manager. You know, they're all the same level. We're all specialized individuals. We all add value to the company. So, line authority is you're directly responsible for achieving the goal. Okay, if you have line authority, you are directly responsible. You have legitimate power. Staff authority, you don't really have to make the decision. You can just advise. Advisory staff has been used throughout the history of time. Emperors and kings, dictators, parliaments, they all have advisors. And so in HR, we need to understand we really stand in the middle of line and staff authority. We can tell some people what to do, but we are advisors of the company. Let's talk a little about the HR department. What's the HR department like? So there are all kinds of people who work in an HR department at a big company. At a small company, it might just be you, one person who does HR. But at a big company, they're going to have a lot of different people all involved. You might have recruiters, and their job is just like a headhunter, just to find new people. You might have a compensation manager. Their job is just to deal with payment. You might have a labor relations specialist. Their job is just to deal with unions. An EEO representative, we'll learn EEO later, but that's equal employment opportunity. And that has to do with government rules and regulations, what we'll talk about next class. We'll get right into the laws of HR next class. You might have a training specialist. Certainly there are lots of people who focus on that. That's one of the biggest things. And in fact, I'll tell you at some point this semester for a homework assignment, I will ask you to create a training exercise, because I know people who have just made so much money in China doing trainings just based on whatever skills they have. I know people who are from France and they did sommelier training, just wine tasting. I know people who are from different countries in Eastern Europe and they've just done cultural training on what's my culture like and how would you work with an Eastern European company. It doesn't matter. There's plenty of money in China that companies have big training budgets and they're always looking for new training opportunities. So how do we know if we need an HR department in a company? Let's say you go and get a job as a manager and they don't really have an HR department. Do they need one? You know, generally when you start a company, you don't need a separate HR department. What does HR do in a small company? In a very small company, you pay people, you handle the benefits, you handle the records. That's really all HR does in like a 3-person company or a 4-person company. So you don't need a separate person just to do HR. How do we know when you need an a dedicated HR professional in a company? Generally, we're going to use this staff ratio. And the ratio is about 1%. So if you have 100 employees in your company, now you should have 1 dedicated HR specialist. Less than 100 employees, you might not need one. I mean, maybe you, obviously 90, you might need one. But even with 30 or 40 or 50 employees, you might not need someone who just does HR. It's a very specialized job. But for 100 employees, you should have one. By the way, when I'm lecturing, I can't read the chat. I can see somebody sent a chat, but I can't read it. So if somebody does have a question, please just unmute yourself and ask. How much money do companies spend on HR? You know, is it a big part of their budget? It's not, 50% of their budget, but typically it is about 1%, 0.8 to 1%. That's how much a company should really be spending on HR. It shouldn't be that much money. And obviously this is for bigger companies. When you work in HR, you might have a variety of different kinds of titles. Okay, you might be called a manager. You might be called an analyst. You might be called a recruiter, a coordinator. One of the most common titles these days is ninja. You see that in a lot of tech companies. You know, welcome to the company. Here's a name card that says you're a tech ninja, that says you're a sales ninja. They've started doing that in America because they don't want to give you money, so they'll just give you a crazy title. We want in HR to make sure that the titles reflect, because we're the ones who give titles. You know, we want to make sure that they reflect the correct jobs. Director, administrator, officer, we try not to give those to just anybody. Those are the highest level ones. Representative tends to be the lowest. But in HR, part of what we do is we give titles to people. So in all companies, there is HR. But there's obviously a big difference between a small company and a big company. So in a small company, up to 500 people, there's a lot less separation. You might have 1 or 2 people who do all of HR, the testing, the compensation, the performance management, the benefits, the HRIS, all of it. When you have a large company, and we're talking about more than 1,500 people, then you really have specialized jobs. You have 1 person who's just in charge of testing. You have 1 person who's just in charge of labor relations, or 1 person who's just in charge of legal for HR. So it depends. If you're looking at a small company and you want to be a manager, you might just be an HR manager. If you're looking at a big company and you're entering, you might understand that you might have to specialize in a field. Obviously, the larger the company, the more we have specialization, the more they have geographic locations around the world. Apple has, places all around the world. The more it's going to be unionized. There'll be a larger variety of jobs. And there'll also be a lot more grievances. And this is a word we're going to see a lot this semester, grievance. Grievance is another word for complaint. And in HR, just like I said, what if Chloe comes to me and says she's fighting with her boss? That's a grievance. She has a grievance. And in HR, we handle grievances. We also handle discipline problems. You know, if somebody's been coming late, or leaving early, or falling asleep at work, or somebody was drunk at work, anything like that. We handle those things, and we have to know how. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. The next thing to talk about is the trends. Anybody get this? the trends that influence HR. What kind of things have happened in the past few years that have really influenced HR? The big 5 trends are diversity, technology, globalization, challenges, and workforce projections. So diversity first. Now we'll talk about diversity a little bit more later. We don't talk about it too much. We talk about it more in OB. But anybody who's taken organizational behavior should understand that when we say diversity, we don't just mean different races or different skin colors. You know, 2 people from the same village in China could be very diverse. Can you tell me, Christine, how could 2 Chinese people from the same village in China, how could they be diverse?
2 people from the same village in China, right?
Yep.
They can be diverse because they have different, I don't know, qualities about themselves. They're obviously male and female, and just their different characteristics, I guess. Like,
okay, sure.
They're not just based on skin color or where you're from or whatever.
Sure.
Like
so
that.
Gender is a big one.
Yeah.
Personality is a big one. Bella, can you think of anything else besides gender and personality?
Maybe background. I mean,
sure. One might be rich, one might be poor. One might come from a family where everybody has a doctorate or a master's. The other might come from a family where nobody ever went to high school. Totally different backgrounds. One could come from a family that's extremely religious, and the other could come from a family that's extremely liberal. And of course, one could be 15 years old and the other could be 65 years old, right? This is what we're talking about with diversity. We are not just talking about people with different skin colors and different races and different ethnicities. We are talking about all the kinds of workforce diversity. We're talking about the fact that you're getting a lot of older people who are not retiring. The retirement age in China was 50. You better believe that's going to change. In America, it was 65, and people already can't retire at 65. In China, it's just going to get older. You'll have more and more older people in the workforce, and that's something we need to deal with. Increasing immigration between countries is obviously important. The idea of more online workers, the idea of more temporary workers who have multiple jobs, the idea of different ages. And it's not just age. Gen X, Gen Y, and millennials are just totally different. You guys are probably all, what are you, Gen Y? Hey, Ethan, what generation are you?
I was born in 90, so I'll be 30 in 2 days. So I think that's Gen X, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's not Gen X. I'm Gen X.
I don't know. You're okay, then I'm definitely Gen Y.
Yeah, you're Gen Y. Gen X, like me, was born when there was no internet or cell phones. So it's often done in terms of technology, but like when I was a kid growing up, there was none of this existed. The whole technology didn't exist. Gen Y grew up with the beginning of this, with the minimization. Things got smaller and things became added to each other. Now you have a phone with all these different functions on it. And then, you got any millennials? Maybe all you guys are Gen Y. Who's the youngest? Crystal, you're probably pretty young.
I think
Maybe
I'm
you're-
millennial.
Who's a millennial?
I think so.
Wait, who said that?
Jonathan.
Who?
Me?
Okay.
Jonathan, you're millennial?
I think so. 1996.
Oh, God. Youth is wasted on the young. 1996. Yes, you're probably a millennial. You know, what defines these generations that as an HR professional, we need to know? If you're working with somebody who's my age, I'm 45. You're working with somebody who's my age, what does somebody in their 40s want to get from a job? What kind of benefits do they expect? And how is that different than someone Jonathan's age? You know, it can be very different in terms of the willingness to work with, let me give you this handout next week. But generally, anybody who's after 95 is Gen Z or Y. Millennials are around 2000. So I would say Jonathan is a millennial, or you could say Gen Z. Most people don't say that. I'm right at the end of Gen X. And before me, my parents were the baby boomers, and before that was the greatest generation, is what they call it. So how do we define millennials? Millennials are high maintenance. They always want to know if they're doing a good job. You know, they need praise, they need feedback. Millennials expect feedback from HR. They expect recognition if they did a good job. They're very high performing because they can use a lot of technology. You know, some of the differences between all these different generations. So this modern generation, kind of the generation of a lot of you guys born after 1995, you know, look over here at mobility, 17 jobs and 15 homes in a lifetime. My parents' generation had probably 2. My generation, most of my friends, I'm a little different because I lived in China, but most of my friends had approximately 5. 5 places they lived and like 3 jobs. You guys, 17 jobs and 15 places you live. A lot more wealth, a lot more university education. Different names are definitely different. Nobody has these names in our class, any of those. How much technology people use. I have a Bella. There's a Bella. No, Isabella.
Is it Chloe?
Oh yeah, there's a Chloe. That's true. So what engages people, right? For Gen Z, there's a lot of facilitation, understanding how to do something, being very focused on the learner, having an open book world, where if you talk about earlier generations, everything was closed book. It was not focused on the person, it was focused on the curriculum. And it's not about how you do things, it's about what you should do. So different learning styles. You know, there are definitely differences if you're working in HR. And if you guys who are young are working in HR, you might have to work with people who are older than you. The next big difference is technology. Obviously, as technology changes, that deeply affects the nature of work. Now most jobs are knowledge intensive, they're high tech. That's replacing traditional factory type jobs. We're getting more service jobs. So as an HR professional, you really need to understand how continuous education works. You need to understand things about online learning, whether it's Coursera and Khan Academy and online degrees and continuing education, and all of that stuff is much more important. Globalization, obviously huge. One of the things I love about Donghua, the level of diversity. In this class alone, my God, how many countries do we have in this class? Probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We probably have like 13 countries in this one class, and that is unbelievable. Really fantastic. But globalization leads to a lot more competition, a lot more pressure to make your costs lower, to make things more productive, more efficient, more effective. We're going to learn in this class how do we measure all of those things. But at this point, if everything can be done on Zoom, and of course it's not perfect, but this is, I mean, you guys, we are living through a crazy moment in this technologicalization is a better word than that. But the movement from traditional education to completely online based education and work is happening now. And it's happening because it has to. And that means that companies and schools and everybody, they can hire people from around the world. If the technology improves that everything can be done online, why do you need people who live right there? You don't. And so everything is going to move in the direction of online work. Economic challenges. I mean, we don't even need to talk about that. The economic challenges facing the world right now are unprecedented. The kind of debt that most countries have, the number of companies that are going bankrupt, it is so important. The recessions that are looming, the fact that many countries are just printing money, America most of all. And what's going to happen, you know, in the coming election? What's going to happen when they can't just keep printing money anymore? What's going to happen when countries go back. People have talked about China going back to the gold standard. No country's gone to the gold standard since the 1930s. Now, what's going to happen? It's very, very up in the air, and companies really need the right people for the job. HR is absolutely critical. But with all the unemployment that's happening in the world, housing prices are going up, interest rates for loans are like nothing, but everybody's accumulating all this debt. To really be able to work in HR, you really have to understand how these things affect the employees in a company, to really be able to deal with them. Accumulation of debt is a real problem. People get stressed out. Now look, to me, coming from my generation, I don't think debt is a big deal. I've been in debt my whole life because I paid for law school myself, and I'll be in debt forever. I don't even care. It doesn't affect my life at all. You just have to pay some money every month. I'll just do it for the rest of my life. You know, just like but my parents' generation could never have imagined that. Now, working in HR, you need to deal with being able to explain to people how debt really works and understanding how that affects people. Finally, is sort of this idea of work-life balance, which is that more people today, they don't want to work 17 hours a day. They don't want to work in the office nonstop all weekend. They want flexible hours, especially with the environment we're in right now. When we get the vaccine and the pandemic is over and we all go back to work, at that point, people are still going to want flexibility. Wellness programs are going to become more and more important. There'll be a reduction in turnover and increased motivation and productivity if there's flexibility and wellness and educational advancement. People are more and more not just looking for promotions, they're looking for the chance to learn new skills, something that'll take them to a whole new level of employment or something that can change their careers. If you're working in HR, you cannot expect somebody to stay with your company for 10 years anymore. They might leave, and you have to know that if you work in HR. The last section I'd like to talk about today. So we're pretty good. We're close to the end. I know it's a lot of listening on your part today because there was no video for you to watch. Generally, there's a video for you to watch, and then we can spend the time engaged in discussion about the video and about these topics, as opposed to just me lecturing you, which is very boring on Zoom because it's not interactive. But the last thing I want to talk about today is called talent management. Talent management is what we call the end-to-end process. In HR, from the very beginning of we need people, we need to hire people. From that moment where I recruit people, I find them, I do advertisements. How do I advertise? We'll learn all of that. How do I analyze the job? Then I get a bunch of people. I give them the right tests. There's all kinds of tests you can give to people. We'll learn a lot about that. Then I get the right people for the job. I need to give them some orientation. And then I give them some additional training throughout the job. I decide how to train them and compensate them. Well, I have to evaluate and appraise their performance. This end-to-end process is called talent management. And in a high-performance work system, which is what we want, talent management is critical. And we can measure this using our HRIS systems. Now, when I say we use HRIS systems, generally we're talking about two computer-based things. One is something called metrics, and the other is called an HR scorecard. Metrics are statistics. How many employees were sick this month? How many employees were late this month? How many employees finished an online course this month? And how much did it cost us when they were late? How much did the online course cost us? For the people who were late 10 minutes this month, did they make more or less money than the other employees? For the employees who attended our Friday get-togethers, did they have better luck with their customer satisfaction this month? We can measure everything. And the more things we can measure, the more we can determine how should we be spending our money in HR? What kind of training should we have? What's a good use for our money? Then we also have the HR scorecard. And that measures all of these activities on one screen. So the metrics are the statistics. The scorecard is the screen. So let me give you an example of what a scorecard looks like. Okay, this is what a scorecard might look like. Now this would be like for one employee. You know, in terms of, for example, in terms of customer service, what was their month to date and their year to date? Month to date, this month, they have an 84% customer satisfaction. And for the year, they have 82%. So they're doing good this month. Their leadership skills have gone up. How do we measure someone's leadership skills? We have surveys. We have online quizzes. We have meetings with the employees. We have all kinds of methods. We can see their turnover for the entire company. We can see our budget for the entire company if we want. We can see our monthly productivity, right? So this would be a company scorecard, actually, not a person scorecard. Here's employee satisfaction. Did we exceed our expectations month to date and year to date? How are we doing on referring people? Are we getting good referrals? How are we doing on people's intent to stay? This would be for the whole company. Now let's look at something for an individual. Okay, so for an individual, here's another chart we might have. And we might be able to measure the individual's coaching and development. How many sessions did we use? What were the KPIs? Now here's something you're going to see a lot this semester. KPI. KPI means key performance indicator. I think I can even write stuff down here. Oh, there was something I tried yesterday. It was terrible. Subtitles. It's going to subtitles. Yes. I speak and it writes stuff. We live in the distant future. So good. Okay. KPI. KPI. Yes. Key performance indicator. You tell me that's not cool. No, go away now. Now go away. Now. No. Okay. So key performance indicator. Now what that means, and this is quite important, and we're going to talk about it again and again this semester. Let's say that Abigail works at our company. Now, Abigail wants to get her bonus, and she wants to get a raise this year. How do we know if Abigail did a good job? So let's say in January, I'm in HR, and I sat down with Abigail, and I said, okay, Abigail, you work in advertising at our company. And last year, you worked on 5 different teams, and those teams all rated you at an 85% satisfaction. This year, let's say this 6 months, let's say this quarter, 3 months. This quarter, we'd like you to get to 86%. Also, you worked with 2 clients, and you brought in $10,000. In this quarter, we'd like you to bring in $12,000. Okay, we're going to give you the indicators of your performance. We want you to achieve this and this and this and this. And if you do it, you get your bonus. Now, this is how it's done in big companies, is they make sure that everybody knows what do you need to achieve in order to get your bonus or your promotion or your raise in your salary, right? It shouldn't be left to chance. It should be very clear. You should know what is your KPI. So again, please remind me, Anais, what does KPI stand for?
Key performance indicator.
Good. Okay, so as I said, KPI, key performance indicator, it is a measurable value. It has to be measurable. It can't just be you did a good job last year, we want you to do a good job again. It has to be something that is measurable. No. Measurable. And what's it about? It's about our objectives. Why does an organization use KPIs? To see if they are successful at reaching their target. That's why we have a KPI. So we want to make sure our target is everybody has 90% customer satisfaction rating. We want to make sure everybody has an 85% efficiency rating, an 87% effectiveness rating. So we know what we want. Now, if you move up to the right level, you get your bonus. One other thing just to mention briefly is the idea of ethics. So in HR, we do work a lot with ethics. Let's say that Chloe comes to my office and she's upset because Jonathan got mad at her for whatever, he's the boss, and she's upset. You know, she might say he's bad, or he's doing something wrong, or I know he was stealing, or, you know, what if, you know, she says he used the company credit card to buy lunch for his friends. You know, what we're talking about there is ethics. The standards that we use to decide what conduct should or shouldn't be, the principles of conduct. And in HR, we are going to be faced with issues. What do we do about an employee who came in drunk? You know, let's say that Ethan came in drunk a whole bunch of times. What do we do? Can we fire him? It's not black and white like that. Sorry?
In my experience, you couldn't fire somebody while they were drunk. You had to kind of, the union would protect the drunk workers, so they had to do like Alcoholics Anonymous and do some rehab and give them many chances, because it's like it's a mental problem.
But
like
you're assuming you have a union.
In my experience, when I was a supervisor, yeah, there was a union that took care of the workers. So it's like, if I had a problem, there was maybe I had a grievance against me, I'd have to sit down with the union, health and safety, or HR as well.
And it's great that you've had that experience. I mean, that's what a union should do, is have someone there to protect your interests and handle grievances and things like that. Unfortunately, especially in China, there's no unions. So, yeah. You know, and in a lot of places, even where there are unions, like in America, most jobs are not unionized. So, you know, in HR, sometimes we need to be the arbiters, the deciders of what ethical conduct is. Now, we are helped along by certain government regulations. You don't need to know this. You don't have to write this down. But the idea of the SOA, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, they call it SOX, is it changes the reporting requirements. This was created after things like Enron, if anybody remembers that. There was a couple of companies in America, Health South and Enron were big examples, where the CEOs were lying about the amount of money they made. It was all a big pyramid scheme. Bernie Madoff was a famous guy who was involved in those things. And so the government created more and more regulations to make sure that HR departments could not manipulate information.
You could talk about Luckin Coffee when it comes to that as well, in a more recent Chinese.
Yeah, everybody know about Luckin Coffee? Well, let me just finish this and we'll talk about that for a second. So one last thing to say is, if you are really interested in HR, you can get certifications. You don't have to get a master's in HR. You know, HR is a professional job, and there are certifications. There's something called the SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. And they can give these certificates of being a PHR, a GHR, an SPHR. These are really important. If you are actually interested in this kind of field in China, just like if you want to be an English teacher, you might look at getting a TESOL or something like that. If you're interested in working in HR, it might be worth it to look into this society and see how do you get one of these online. These things are worth their weight in gold. So few people have them, especially in China, and these really can be very lucrative jobs. Okay, So we're done with all of the things I want to say. Your homework is to read the first 2 chapters. And as I said, I'd like you to read the Diane Arthur textbook. Don't read the Dessel textbook. You can if you want, the Dessler textbook. But read the one that I put on Blackboard that's in chapters. And then we already have our first presentation group. Okay, good. We're early, so we actually have time, right? This started at 8. So Luckin Coffee was just mentioned. And are all you guys familiar with what happened with Luckin Coffee? No? Ethan, can you tell us what happened?
I just know it as the same kind of situation as with Enron, where I guess the CFO or some high up right at the top was lying about how much money they were making to kind of increase investor interest and kind of pump up their share number, their share price.
So similar.
And I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about as far. I just knew that they shit the bed. Like.
Yes. So, well, what had happened was they were opening a lot of locations that were all losing money, and they were reporting that all of these locations were making money, and they were reporting this to the American Stock Exchange, which you can't do. And their goal was to get 100% foreign investments, and they did. They got hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign investment. And when they had enough money, then they admitted the truth that it was all lies, but they had, and this is, I have an investment club at CIP if anybody's interested. We're actually meeting tomorrow, I think. Oh God, I'm so busy. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. No, 10 p.m. Beijing time. Tomorrow, Tuesday at 10 p.m. Beijing time, the CIP Investment Club is meeting. If you're interested, send me a WeChat. I'll put you in the group. And what we do is we look at stocks and we talk about why they go up and down and we analyze them. I'm very interested in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and the options market. So we just look at charts and we understand how to financially analyze a company. So I've been trying to get this off the ground. We have a few people in the club. So if you want to be in the club, just send me a WeChat. It's cool to actually do that on Zoom. That's actually better on Zoom than it is face-to-face because we can all look at our computer screens and I can teach you how to use this stuff, which is quite useful. So anyway, what happened is in Luckin Coffee, they shorted the market. Shorted means you sell. They sold puts, which means that you pick a price and you think it's going to go down. Well, all the CEOs and the CFOs and the HR people at Luckin Coffee, the Chinese people, they guessed that this company was going to go down because they were lying about all the numbers. And of course, the company went down because they lied about all the numbers and they made hundreds of millions of dollars more. And then this is now changing in America. The New York Stock Exchange has started saying that they're not going to let any Chinese companies, Alibaba, Bilibili, JD, Tencent, all of these companies, they're going to have to change how Chinese report things. Because as I said, at the beginning of this, Chinese HR is still back kind of in the dark ages for a lot of the companies. It's really not where it needs to be, you know, as of yet. But of course, that was just a case of pure fraud. So don't invest in Luckin Coffee. Be careful with Chinese stocks if you guys are investing in those. Alibaba's maybe safe. I don't know about the rest. Okay, not on topic. So anything else? Anybody have any questions? No? All right, well, I have no need to keep you. There's nothing else we need to teach today, so I'll let you go 15 minutes early, which is great. Again, for your homework, just read the first 2 chapters, and I will post the video for the next unit soon. As I said, it'll be on Blackboard under the content links. It'll be links to the videos. It'll be on YouTube. So just let me know if you have any problems watching it, and then with that, if I want to, what I usually do is I post discussion questions. And the discussion questions are not graded, but they're going to kind of tell you what we're going to talk about next class, because next class, we're not just going to walk through a PPT like that. That's so boring for everybody, me included. You know, I want to talk to you guys like this, where I can see all of your beautiful rectangles and I can ask you questions and we can talk about it. So I expect that you will have looked at the PPT, watched the videos, looked at the discussion question, read the book, done all of that stuff, and you'll be ready to have a real discussion about this stuff. Cool? Good. All right. Now, what I sometimes do, and I'd like to try this, is, and this will be the first time I'm going to try this. If it's dumb, just tell me. I'm going to transfer host control. Let me give it to Ethan right now. And what I would like to simulate is, imagine that we're really in a classroom and the class is over, so I leave. But the students are still in the room, which means if you guys want to chat, you can. I'm not closing the room. I'm leaving the room. And I think that's an important thing to consider, that as we move towards Zoom, so I'm going to stop recording there. Okay, I stop recording now.